Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Tainted Warriors. I'm Mikey.
I'm Nicole, and this week we're going to talk to you about Breonna Taylor, what happened to her, a little bit about who she was, and, what has happened since then. But before we get to that, we're going to get to our question of the week, which I didn't even write down, but since we just figured out what it was this morning.
Didn't even pick it until this morning, so let's pretend that we thought all week about our answer for this question of the week, which was...
How old were you when you had your first celebrity crush, and who was it?
I can honestly say I was maybe, 9 or 10. No, because obviously I had to realize I was gay first. You know what I mean? I had to realize that, I like boys. But I remember watching HO2? Halloween 2-0? Or, you know what I mean? Halloween Resurrection, or one of those two. And it had Josh Hartnett in it as, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
It's her son. And I was like, ooh, who is this fine man right here? And yeah, so I'd probably say Josh Hartnett was my first celebrity crush. And I couldn't tell you the age. Maybe 12, 13 years old.
Wow. I went before you. I went back ages. Okay, so technically if you ask my mom, my first celebrity crush was Sarah Jessica Parker in Hocus Pocus, when Sarah's flying around the broomstick singing "Come Little Children." I'm pretty sure she thinks that was the first crush I ever had. And I can't necessarily say she was wrong because I don't remember how I was feeling in those moments. I just remembered I loved that part, so I watched it on repeat. But I know for a fact I had a crush on Zach Hansen when I was 8, and to the point where I named my little brother after him. So I can't deny that one.
Yeah. I mean, I would have to say, my parents would probably have thought for a while that Kimberly would have been my crush because of how obsessed I was. But I'm like, nah, I don't love her. I want to be her. I love her in a different way. I don't want to be, yeah.
I'm over Zach Hansen now, by the way, but...
I can't lie. I mean, I haven't seen a picture of Josh Hartnett, but he's probably still cute.
So...
With that out of the way, and, taking things to a little bit more of a serious turn, we're going to start talking about...
the night of March 13th, 2020, when Breonna Taylor, all of that happened. So it was around 12:40 a.m. The Louisville Metro Police Department had a no-knock search warrant that they were executing at 3003 Springfield Drive, Apartment 4, which, of course, was Breonna Taylor's home. They were looking for items that were related to drug trafficking suspect, which was her ex-boyfriend, Jamarcus Glover, that basically was connected to drug trafficking, and they thought maybe she was holding stuff for him or that he could potentially be there, but anyway, we'll get into that a little bit later. Both of their names were on the warrant that they had, but the police ended up using a battering ram to open the door. Her boyfriend at the time that was sleeping there with her, Kenneth Walker, he basically fired one shot to,
warn whoever was breaking through their house, hey, I have a gun.
Right. And that shot hit Sergeant John Mattingly in the leg. So the Mattingly and 2 fellow police officers end up returning fire. They end up hitting Breonna. She ends up dead in the apartment hallway. Kenneth Walker gets arrested for assault and attempted murder of a police officer. And then nothing that they were looking for in the warrant was ever found in the apartment. There was nothing indicating that she was involved in illegal activity. So that's just kind of a summary of what happened that night.
Right. And I do want to just not backtrack, but give a little bit more insight. What is a no-knock warrant? Which is, it actually allows police to break down the door without knocking or identifying themselves. So they can, almost force entry in without letting people know.
I do believe that they're supposed to do it after they open.
After
the doors oopen, they are supposed to announce themselves either way.
Right. Which I would imagine they'd have to too. I just didn't have that part down. Because I do feel there has to be a way for them to be able to identify at some point they are police officers, or else you're going to have a lot more situations like this where people are afraid. I do want to say with that, at least 31 civilians have been killed from the time of 2012 to 2016 because of these, things that have went wrong in a no-knock warrant. while 8 police officers have also passed away throughout that same amount of time. So throughout that 6-year period, there was 31 civilians and 8 police officers that have lost their lives due to a no-knock warrant. I just wanted to get into this one a little bit because this kind of changes things a little bit and kind of shows a little backside of maybe why these aren't so good and what could go wrong. But I do want to say the reason why these have all started first. So no-knock warrants started in about the around 1970s for the war on drugs, and police officers wanted to try to get into the house, and they wanted to either stop from people disposing of their evidence and doing all this before they actually identify, because with knocking and then
Not
saying
flush
police
it down the toilet.
right, they're flushing it, and they also were trying to draw back people from running or either hurting the police officers too. That's why they
Catches them by surprise, takes
Yes.
them off guard.
that way, like I said, so that they could keep the evidence more inside. So from about 1970 to 1980, there was just only a few thousand. And it said a few, so we'll make it a little higher and say that maybe 5,000 of these no-knock warrants have been done. Then, that number jumps excruciatingly high from about 1990 to 2010, which I get that is 20 years added compared to the 10. But the number is now up to 60,000.
It's 12 times as much.
Come on.
So it's 20 years versus 10 years, and it jumps 12,000.
Yeah.
12 times. It should be 10,000, not 60,000.
Exactly. I feel like throughout the time, maybe some police officers forgot what the actual use of it was for, and they maybe have taken it and used it for other things. I don't know. I just feel like that's extremely high. And because of one of these no-knock entries, life-changing injuries suffered by 19-month-old, his nickname was Baby Boo Boo. It was Bou. His real name said it was Baby Bahama Phone Savannah. I'm sorry, I can't really pronounce that. He was actually critically wounded when a flash grenade was thrown into the house that he was in, and it hit his playpen. Going off, flash grenades are used to momentarily blind suspects, kind of leave them confused. Disoriented. Baby Boo Boo needed over 15 operations, or more than 15 operations, over the next few years because of this. And now, mind you, the reason why police did this no-knock entry and what they were looking for was $50 worth of methamphetamine that was bought outside of the house. So somebody, which was known to be the cousin of the baby, did sell drugs outside of that house. I don't know for how long, I don't know how, but it was known that he wasn't there for a while. The cousin didn't stay with them. So, but police still went to that house.
The no-knock warrant.
And did all of that, not even knowing where that victim or where that suspect really was. They just knew that, hey, we bought the drugs at this house from him here. He's got to be there. And it has, like I said, it changed this baby's life. And it's changed a lot of people's lives. And like I said, it seems like it's starting to become more like almost scare tactic, and not used in the way that I feel they were actually using it for. They were trying to make this be for good. They wanted to try to count or take down the number of, people that, like I said, fired back at police and stuff. But in all actuality, it seems like it's causing more harm than it is good.
That's crazy.
Right?
You just caught me off guard with all that shit. So yeah, first, before we get into all the details about why Breonna Taylor's case is crazy, I do want to go over a little background, just a general kind of thing about who she was. She was a 26-year-old African-American woman who was working as an emergency room technician in Louisville, Kentucky. Like, before the incident, I read that she actually had just gotten off of working a few consecutive days of 12-hour shifts. So, as an emergency room technician, can you imagine, like, that's crazy. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Right?
But there were a lot of things, like, I guess you would call them rumors on the internet that said she worked as an EMT. It wasn't necessarily wrong. She did work as an EMT in 2016, but she left the same year. There was no reason why that I could find, but it wasn't like she was terminated, and the license that you get with it she didn't have that suspended. So it wasn't like she left on bad terms or anything. She was the kind of person that basically enjoyed spending time with her friends and family. Like, 2 of her cousins were saying they were more like sisters, and like they like to just kind of hang out. And like Breonna would randomly text them like, "Hey, let's go get some mac and cheese from Chick-fil-A," like things like that. She did have her goal to own her own home within the year, so she had her head on straight and like basically had her priorities in order for the most part. And I just kind of wanted to point out she was born on June 5th of 1993, so that makes her a Gemini, because, I have this little thing where I like astrology. I don't know a lot about it, but I like it. So I kind of looked up what their features are supposed to be like. They're optimistic, excited over the idea of life, practical but driven. But it did say they could be naive, even though they have like a leader's attitude. Which, I know some Geminis, and there's a few of them that I could see that fitting like perfectly.
Right.
So... But yeah, her family said she was full of life with a contagious smile, and like even as a kid, she would try to do things like help her grandmother take her insulin. Like,
I didn't mean to like cut you off right there, but I do want to just say this: if you've noticed, with almost every single like person we've covered, I mean, almost besides Stacey Caster, has literally been somebody that has been like almost an outstanding person of the society, or like has always been known to help either older people or younger people. It's kind of crazy. Like, we don't know too much information before we pick, you know what I mean, the people who we're going to cover, but it just seems so fitting that it's like...
I guess that's why they say the good die young, maybe?
Right.
Where that phrase comes from. I don't know, but
it's just funny that,
Breonna and her boyfriend Kenneth, that I mentioned was with her the night of the incident, they were kind of on and off again, but they always kind of seemed to drift back together, and everybody thought they would end up together anyway. Kenneth, he said after the incident that they had both been working on getting their individual lives together so that they could come together and kind of create the best future they could, and like had even picked out their future daughter's name, which was going to be like Kenbri, from what he said.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so like it was love, I guess. So now we're gonna get into kind of the details and like shadiness that surrounds what happened. I do want to say it's important to note that in Kentucky, where this happened, that they do have a stand your ground law, which what that means is basically, if you're in your home or something, you kind of have a right to use deadly force against someone if you have a reasonable belief that you're in danger. So that could be like to defend yourself basically against like rape, kidnapping, deadly force, bodily harm. So that's all the people that are like, let a burglar try to come into my house and hurt my family, I'm going to shoot them. Well, that's really standing your ground. Like, yeah.
That's cool.
And I don't think it's in every state, but it is in more than just Kentucky. So there are many states that have it. I don't know why I'm holding a pen. So March 12th, around 12 p.m., Circuit Judge Mary Shaw was presented with 5 warrants, each with no-knock clauses, for 5 different locations throughout Louisville. 3 of them were for known drug houses on Elliott Avenue. It was 2424 through 2426. One was on Muhammad Ali Boulevard. One was on Springfield Drive, which that one was Breonna Taylor's house. And her house was like the opposite end of town. And it was in a nice part of the neighborhood. With the no-knock warrants, the first 2 were signed off at 12:25 p.m., and those were for 2424 and 2425 Elliott Avenue. 6 minutes later, the judge signed off on the one for 2426 Elliott Avenue. So that would have been 12:31 p.m. 4 minutes later, so that would have been 12:35, she signed off on the one for the Muhammad Ali Boulevard home. Those were all in what was called the Russell neighborhood. Now that was 12:35 she signed the last one, right?
Mm-hmm.
12:37 is when she signs off on the one for Breonna's apartment, which was 10 miles away in South Louisville. So 2 minutes you took to go over that warrant.
Wow.
It took her less time to go over that one than the other ones. And she said that she had spent like 30 minutes going over all of them and making like the appropriate justifications or whatever to basically qualify for the grounds to do such a search.
Did you though?
But like that's a 12-minute time frame that like between the first signing and the last signing, that's a 12-minute time frame. So unless you took 18 minutes considering the first two, there's no way you took over half an hour.
Right.
And then not only that, but how do you spend 2 minutes on one warrant? Like either that had no information and thus had no grounds to be a no-knock warrant, or you really were just like the rest of them were good, so I'm going to assume this one's good too.
Yep.
Like, what?
Wow.
But, and it does say that the officer that drafted the warrant, he said that Jamarcus Wilbert, the drug trafficking suspect, had made frequent trips to the apartment, had walked directly into her apartment on January 6th. He said that a U.S. Postal Inspector verified Wilbert had received packages at her apartment, and that Breonna's car had been seen in front of one of the Elliott Avenue homes on several occasions. Which, I mean, honestly, that kind of sounds like you could just be friends and stuff, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, just because...
Which, I mean, I get how that could be reasonable doubt or, like, probable cause kind of thing, but I don't see how... I don't see how it justifies.
Right, I feel like you should need a lot more than just because I saw your car out there and you might have had a suspicious package.
Right. Which Somebody needs to tell me what a suspicious package is also.
Yeah, if somebody does know, like, that's watching this, that can leave it down in the comments. So just, like, things, I understand, like, some things that look broken or maybe, but I don't get what would look suspicious. I mean, maybe if somebody wraps a handgun and tried to send it, I could see, like, that looking like a suspicious package.
How do you get drugs, though? Like, how do drugs
I mean, I feel like it would come in a box. Or, you know what I mean? Like,
when I think of how would I ship a box, like, drugs, I'm like, okay, well, there's a square box. Or, like, honestly, there are birth control companies that use just plain white envelopes and have, like, names that say, like, operations teams and, like, not even the company name or anything. That looks suspicious. Like, sometimes people steal those out of mailboxes thinking they're drugs. So does that count as a suspicious package if I were to walk out of my house with my freaking birth control package?
Good. Maybe.
Like, that would be ridiculous to me, you know what I mean?
Right.
So then,
oh, no, I get it.
Like, if I had a roommate and they did that, would you be able to then try to take me into custody and hold me under suspicion because my roommate walked out with birth control?
Probably.
Like, because
they'd be like, you guys live together, so you have to know. And especially that judge would sign off on your death warrant.
That's what, literally.
You'd be done.
That's why I need to know, like, what qualifies as a suspicious package. Because in my mind, like, this almost sounds like you get shot for having birth control mailed to someone. But anyway, so that was March 12th. Obviously, we're going to execute the warrants now. We already told you the summary of what happened there. But according to Kenneth Walker, this is what happened. He and Breonna had been watching a movie and she fell asleep. They were in the bedroom. They both heard a loud bang on the door. It was so loud it woke her up out of the sleep, and she kind of sat up like startled. And they both asked who's there. They didn't hear any response, so they waited. And then another loud bang came. They again asked who was there. Kind of said that Breonna was screaming at the top of her lungs, like who was there. And they started going towards the door there because there was no answer again. And they're like, "What the hell is going on?" Next thing he knew, the door flew open. And so he had grabbed his 9mm gun, which was a legal gun. He had it registered and everything. And he shot one time, which is basically just a warning shot. Like, hey, I'm armed, I'll shoot you. Like, right, exactly. But of course, when he fires that one shot, the officers that he doesn't know are there return fire. So next thing you know, he notices that Breonna's injured and he calls 911 because he doesn't even see anybody around. So he has no idea what happens. In his mind right now, all that's happened is they were basically startled. The door flung open. He fired a warning shot. They fired back, and now his girlfriend's like basically dead. So he does call 911. I do have that call.
911, Operator Harris, where is your emergency?
I don't know what's happening. Somebody kicked in the door and shot my girlfriend.
Okay, where are you located?
I'm at 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment 4.
3003 Springfield Drive, apartment number 4.
Yes. Oh my God.
Okay, how old is your girlfriend?
She's 26. Breathe. Oh my
You said 26.
God.
Where was she shot at?
I don't know. She's on the grill right now. I don't know.
Okay.
Mama.
You said she's 26. Is she alert and able to talk to you?
No, she's not. Breathe. God.
Okay, and you said you're in apartment number 4.
Hell. Oh my God. Yes, hell.
What's your name, sir?
Oh, my name is Kenneth Walker.
You said Kenneth?
Hell.
And you said she's 26?
Yes.
Okay, you said 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment number 4?
Yes.
Okay. Can you check and see where she's been shot at?
I can't get on that stomach. No,
Okay. Is she alert and able to talk to you?
No, breathe.
Okay.
I think oh my God. Oh my God.
Can you get her turned over on her back? I need for you to check her and see where she's shot at.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I gotta go, Mama.
Okay.
I gotta go. You back.
Kenneth? Kenneth, can you hear me?
Obviously, you've listened to the clip now, so Kenneth, you can hear him like crying and saying that someone kicked in the door and shot his girlfriend. He's saying like my baby, but there's complete silence in the background. There's nothing. So there's no police identifying themselves. There's no one coming in trying to arrest him. There's nobody securing the scene, even though they believe that there's shooters inside. Another neighbor actually called 911 also and said that the apartment behind her had shots going off like crazy, that she had heard at least 7 or 8 shots and they were still going. There was a second neighbor who had peeked his head out of his front door. But he noticed, obviously all the police, but he was told to stay inside. And he said that he only heard police identify themselves as police one time, but he did later change his story also. So that guy's lost all credibility, honestly.
Right.
Like you went to both sides. But I do have clips of those that I'll play as well. Or not those particular ones, but it's like a compilation of like 4 different tiny clips of the neighbors calling 911.
There's a lot of gunshots. Yeah, I need to get over here. They're shooting out like crazy. Yeah, just get down. Our glass door is shattered, and I understand there's something going on, but I have a 5-year-old in here.
There was a man named Donovis Duncan who was a member of the Louisville Metro Police Department and lived in Breonna Taylor's complex. He said that he was home and he heard 20 to 25 shots, and so he turned on his little radio, his police scanner, and he hears that an officer is down, and he hears the address of the complex, so he puts on his uniform and he kind of goes down to see if there's anything he can do to help. The officers finally, at this point, basically, Manley's retreated, so like they're not at the front door anymore, they're all like in the parking lot, and they start yelling for whoever's in apartment 4 to come out with their hands behind their back and just slowly walk towards them, which they do. But there was body cam footage also that shows that, like, it shows the scene of him walking back, and you can see that he's trying, like, at one point he's trying to go to the right a little bit because, like, obviously there's cars in the parking lot, and they're like yelling at him. They're like, keep walking, and I'm like, okay, like, you're being a little bit of a dick right now. I understand when your cops got shot and you're like pissed, but like, he is trying, but you can't fucking walk backwards into an SUV.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but then there was no body cam footage from the officers that executed the warrant. None of them had body cams either on or, like, that were turned on. So, I did read, I didn't have it written down, but I did read somewhere that the narcotics department, like, I guess all the different departments got body cams in like 2015.
Mhm.
But the narcotics department originally was like, no, we don't want them. And like for whatever reason, like they were like, okay, you don't have to have body cams.
Just you guys?
I don't really know. I forgot to like look more into that, which is why I didn't really write it down
Right.
in here. But like, it's kind of funny.
It's a little
that, like,
sketch.
Right. Because it does come up again later in the consequence area too. But obviously they called in additional officers after the shooting. Like when there's an officer down, you get all forces that you can. Like even SWAT got called in. But there was a body cam video, and the neighbor like took a cell phone video of Kenneth being escorted back to the police car. And you can hear them, like the neighbor asked him, he's like, why did you fire shots? And Kenneth was just crying, and he's like, we didn't know who it was. Like, the entire time, even being drawn back to the police car, he's like, we didn't know who it was. I don't know what's happening. My girlfriend's dead. Like, so he seemed genuinely, like, distraught.
Right.
So, according to Sergeant John Mattingly, the group of officers, it was 7 officers, I believe, that were, he said they were basically thrown together. They had never worked together in previous cases, but the department basically needed bodies because they were executing so many warrants at the same time that they didn't have enough manpower unless they recruited other people. So
maybe that's a sign that you should maybe draw back a little bit. Maybe or don't
change
do them
your
all
time.
at one day.
Right. Like, what the...
Like, hey, we'll do this one today, we'll do this one tomorrow. I mean, I get that you have a bigger chance of, like, you know what I mean? Well, like, them fleeing, because, like, if you do one day and the next day, like,
right.
that, and especially being neighbors. But I just feel like you shouldn't maybe do, what was it,
But
4
really,
of them at one time?
I mean, if those houses are next together, really, you could have done them all kind of at the same time. All 3 of the ones on Elliott Ave.
Yeah.
And then maybe you could have had, like, I mean, Breonna's house was in a nice part of town. You could have fucking left someone to sit on it, make sure while you were
And
executing the other warrants, like, nothing happened,
And
and then executed the other ones.
Yep, right after.
Like, what do they call that? Consecutively.
Yeah.
So, yeah, John Mattingly also said that they were told that the main target, Jamarcus Glover, Breonna's ex-boyfriend, they were told he had the packages delivered there and that she could be holding either dope, money, or packages for him. You know, so she's an associate of his. Like, she's involved with this drug trafficking just by association. But Mattingly says when he was shot in the leg, he fired back 4 shots, and then he kind of repositioned, fired off 2 more, and then basically retreated because he actually got shot in the femoral artery. So he could have bled to death. Like, he was bleeding to death at that point. But as he was retreating, he noted officers were firing, and he kind of just kept yelling, like, has anybody called the EMS yet, as he was retreating. I don't know if he was worried about
himself or other people.
It is also a little important note that, like, he and I don't know how many of the other officers on scene, but at least the other 2 that did fire shots supposedly had no hand in the actual investigation that pertained to this case. So they really were just bodies. Like, they didn't even know that Breonna had her sister and her 2-year-old niece that, you know, regularly stayed at her house. So they literally thought that, like, they're like, no, she'll be there alone.
Wow.
The police do say that they banged once, like knocked once, and they didn't get a response. So they tried to knock again, and there was again no response. And that was when they forced entry using their battering ram. And they say they announced themselves, but there was up to 11 neighbors that said that they did not hear police identify themselves. So, I mean, that's not even 1 or 2. That's a freaking lot of neighbors to be like, yeah, no, they did not. And when you hear the 911 calls, also not one person mentions, like, hey, I see police shooting. Like, it's like, no, terror. Like, a game just came in and is trying, like, it's a turf war or some shit. There was body cam footage from the officers that arrived on scene after the shooting. And one of them actually you can overhear Brett Hankison, one of the officers that fired shots. He was saying over the radio, officer down, the suspect has an AR-15 style rifle. It's not like an he didn't say it word for word like that. He basically said the guy has a rifle. It looks like an AR-15 style. But Kenneth had a 9mm handgun. So it looked nothing like the rifle that he claimed. and it fired one shot, and like it was like the freaking apocalypse was happening. So, because everybody thought like, oh, well, people inside are shooting, like there's multiple shots, when really it's all their own shots that they're fucking thinking are. Kenneth fired one shot. One shot was fired from inside the apartment. All the other shots came from police. So if you think that there's multiple shots coming from the suspect, no, they're coming from your people, and you're shooting back at your own people's like bullets, basically, which is dumb as hell. But so SWAT did come in from another search, but they actually incorrectly thought that it was an upstairs apartment they were going to. They didn't even know where the hell they were going, because it was a downstairs apartment. It was like on the right hand side. And when they actually didn't even arrive until Kenneth was already being escorted to the police car, so shit had already gone down, and they were late to the party. But they went inside, making sure they stepped over Breonna's body numerous times before they cleared the scene. And then after they cleared the scene, they're like, anybody check her wrist? Like, nobody has done that to this point. Like, come on. Like, just because, honestly, I understand securing the scene, but if you have a whole SWAT team, you're telling me not one of them can sit in this hall and, like, try to do some shit with her,
right,
while the rest of them clear the scene? Like, you don't have any kind of medic in there, like, even basic medical training. And then after that, of course, then they were asking Breonna if she could hear them. Like, you already cleared the scene. Don't you think she would have said something when she heard people? Like, if it just... I saw that body cam footage, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And then, in that same body cam footage, you can see Brett Hankinson actually walking back into the apartment after the scene is clear. But I read that he was supposed to actually be escorted to the PIU, which I think is the Public Integrity Unit, immediately after the situation. Like, he shouldn't even have been there, but he was, like, walking back to the apartment like, no, those are our bullets, or those are theirs. Like, what? Why are you there? There was the president of the Louisville Metro Council, who was a former narcotics detective. He had worked narcotics for 14 years. His name was David James. He said in training that candidates are actually taught to announce themselves loud enough that people within a 100-foot radius can hear them. And he actually had listened to Kenneth's call to 911 as well, and he was like, why is there silence in the background? Kenneth, at some point, I think it was when he hung up with 911, I'm not entirely sure, because at the end of the 911 call, he was like, I gotta go, and I heard him say something, you hear him say something about mom somewhere in there, but at some point he called Breonna's mom. So she tries to drive down to the apartment. She's met by a police blockade, and one of the officers tells her she needs to go to the hospital. So, of course, she goes to the hospital, and she waits there for more than 2 hours before someone there tells her that there's no one by the name of Breonna Taylor even scheduled to be coming in. So, mom returns back to the scene, and she's met with more police who basically keep telling her to wait. She waits like an hour. She asks where Kenneth is, and they tell him that he's at the jail. She keeps waiting, and she waits until like 11 a.m., and then she's finally told that Breonna's upstairs, and that's when she realizes that her daughter's dead. And she didn't even find out, like, how she died. She found out from the TV news that Breonna was shot by police. So, it was 2 p.m. before they actually let her in the apartment, and she saw, like, bullet holes everywhere. But you can see them, there are multiple walls. They're in the ceiling to the upstairs apartment. There's 3 above, like, kind of right above blood splatter, so it looks like those 3 might have hit her, and then, like, she fell to the ground and bled out. I'm not entirely sure. I don't work ballistics or shit like that, so, or forensics. But there were bullets that went through pots and pans. There was a bullet in the stove, a bullet in the clock on the wall. Like, there were literally bullets everywhere, in, like, all the rooms. Like, the bathroom near the toothbrush holder, like, literally all the rooms had, like, bullet holes somewhere. It was ridiculous. Joshua James had drafted the warrant for Breonna's house. He claimed that he personally had witnessed Jamarcus Glover leaving her home with the suspicious package in January of 2010, and that he was using either her phone number or address, I don't remember which, as late as February of 2020, so that's like a month beforehand. David James, I mentioned him earlier, he said that the information that led to the arrest warrant basically wasn't truthful. Like, he said he'd seen something where it basically made it sound like it was a secure complex with, like, doors and cameras and all that, and that there was possibly, like, a criminal history of Breonna and Jamarcus, but that wasn't the case at all. Like, there were no cameras, there weren't really, like, there was no doors near her apartment, like, no extra security. Once you're in the complex, you can get to her door. And obviously neither of them had, like, I mean, Jamarcus had the criminal history, Breonna didn't, but as I wrote later on somewhere, Jamarcus didn't actually have any violent crimes on his rap sheet from what I saw. So there was no reason to think that it was going to turn violent.
Right.
Like, he had already been arrested in December. So you arrested him in December on some other charge. He's out now, which isn't even fucking, it's like 3 months later. What makes you think all of a sudden he was violent? If you were able to take him in before, why are we doing all this now? But, anyway, there was a lawyer named Lenita Baker. If you Google her, she's actually, like, she's got a lot of awards, and she's done a lot of, like, she's a top lawyer in Louisville. She was working for the family of Breonna Taylor, but she says that narcotics detectives are actually supposed to corroborate activity of, like, the suspicious, like, receiving packages and, like, being there and whatnot. They're supposed to corroborate activity within 48 hours of getting the warrant. So, in this case, that didn't happen. The last information they had was possibly used her address as late as February of 2020. Package went in January. Okay, so that's at least weeks before, because this was March 13th that she died.
Right.
And it was March
48-hour rule.
Right. It was March 13th at midnight. So really, it's like not even 2 weeks into March. So no matter which way you look at it, even if you used their address on like freaking the last day of February, it's at least 12 days. Like,
still not way longer. It's still longer than 2.
And honestly, it's been a couple of months, but for a solid 10 months, I was getting mail from my ex. So, like, you can't always control
where the mail.
Right, where their mail's going.
Right.
If they don't want it, they don't care where it's going. Trust me. But Joshua James, the officer that drafted the warrant again, he was ultimately terminated. And that termination was upheld in July of 2021 by the Louisville Metro Police Merit Board. Their reason for his termination was that he basically was untruthful about how he obtained the information in the warrant. He didn't personally verify that Jamarcus had received the package there, and he relied on a fellow officer's word instead. He does plan to appeal in the circuit court, which kind of pisses me off, because the circuit court is where Judge Mary Shaw was that signed the warrant in the first place.
Great.
So I'm a little like, if he gets if his appeal is accepted there, I'm a little like,
wouldn't she not be able to do it because
I don't think it'd be her, but if it's the same court that pays that little attention to shit, then no offense, but she's kind of giving the court a bad name in my mind.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't really want to.
Right, but you have to think though, as long as if it's not her though, there are just like, even look at mine and your judge when we, had to use them. They were both different, and they were from the same one.
Mine was a dick.
Right, and mine was really nice. So that's what I'm saying, though, is that as long as... Because I feel like that would be conflict of interest if he gets hurt.
Well, no, he can't have her because it is a conflict.
Right,
and
so then hopefully...
It just means that, we can hope that he'll get one that keeps it, like, upholds it.
Needs to be a dick. Needs to be a dick.
But at the same time, there's ones that have people in their back pocket, so we don't really know. That's why, like, if it's upheld, like, if he gets to appeal, if they're like, yeah, we accept your appeal, then I'm going to be like, really? Like, I'm not fucking surprised.
Right.
But anyway, so he was fired, and there was actually a postal inspector named Tony Gooden that said a different agency had asked him in January of 2020 to look into if suspicious packages were going to Breonna Taylor's home. And his office concluded that it did not happen. So, according to the postal inspector, she didn't get any suspicious shit for Jamarcus Glover.
Wow.
The 2424 Elliott Avenue had been the primary target to locate Jamarcus Glover. I do have it written right here. He was convicted of drug-related crimes in the past, but nothing violent again. So they end up finding that he dropped his kid to his baby mama's house, and then he did go to the home on Elliott Avenue, and he was apprehended there. Officer Kelly Goodlett originally recorded the time as 12 a.m., on the seized property form from Elliott Avenue. So that just kind of lists everything they took from that home. It was like a bag of marijuana from the nightstand in the bedroom, or like I don't remember everything on. But yeah, it listed the time as 12 a.m., but that got scratched out, and it was replaced with, I don't know how to say this in military time, it's 0040. I never know how to say just minutes. It's like 40 minutes, but it's like 0 hours and 40 minutes.
Or 0,
100 hours and 40, 040 maybe.
I want to say it's like 100.
I can say everything but those.
Right.
So basically, it was scratched out and rewritten as 1240. There was a copy of the seized property form that actually showed the time still listed as 12, but it had a light 40 written in after it. The K-9 report indicates that the K-9 search for Jamarcus Glover started at 12:25, and then Jamarcus Glover's arrest citations list his arrest time as 12:40. Or yeah, they're listed as 12:40, but then his arrest is officially listed as like 2:43. So I don't know if maybe the difference in there might be like 12:40 was when he was arrested on scene, 12:43 was when he was booked at the police station. I don't know if maybe that could be the difference. Right. But basically, like either way, that would still indicate that he was in custody at 12:40. The seized property was listed as seized sometime between 1:20 a.m. and 1:40. But like, you gotta imagine if they're seizing property at that point, they would have already had him in cuffs. They're not gonna sit there and go through the house and start putting stuff in evidence baggies if he's still roaming free.
Right.
Or, like, especially with dogs out. So, Breonna Taylor died sometime between 12:40 a.m. when the warrant execution began and 12:47 a.m. when Kenneth called 911. So, basically, he was in custody when she died. Jamarcus Glover actually told the Courier-Journal that as he was handcuffed outside, he heard police over the radio screaming about shots being fired at Breonna's address, and then an officer was down, and basically he found out about her death while he was outside in handcuffs. And he said that there was never anything illegal at her house. So, like, obviously we know that he has a history of drugs. And he's still saying, like, there was never anything at her house. Like,
right, I also heard that, because they were also trying to say that, like, she held cash for him.
Yeah, cash,
and
drugs.
I don't know if maybe I misread it, but it did say that, like, at first he did say that, like, because she was good with money, that, she held money. But then he does go back on track and say that he never actually said that. So it's kind of weird because, like, a police officer said that they interviewed him and he said he gave Breonna Taylor money because she was good with it. Then he actually goes on record and says, I never told a police officer that.
Well, it's kind of weird that you heard it like that, because what I heard was that when he was in jail, which he did make calls to her from jail, but when he was in jail, supposedly he made a call to her, and in the call somewhere he mentioned that she was holding like $8,000 for him.
Yeah, I heard something about.
But then, like, in his actual interview, he was like, no, like, I don't know where they got that from.
Yeah,
but, like, no.
See, I didn't put the amount on there, but yeah, that's exactly what it was that somebody was saying that she had $8,000 of his, and that.
Which honestly,
and then
like,
he goes on record and says, like, I never said that.
I'm sorry, but I don't think holding on to money for someone is reason enough for anything of like that. Like, sure, ask me to come in for questioning, get a warrant for my statement or whatever. But there should never be, like, a reason to search my house just to find cash. Because, like, Mikey could save his fucking money and give it to me, like, because he wants to move to China. Like,
I'm bad with money in general. Really bad with money. So, like, really, when we see each other, so it's like, all right, hey, if I gave you money to hold on to because I'm bad with it, now that makes you guilty of any crime I've done.
Like, my mom has offered to hold money for me because I'll admit I fucking suck at saving money. So she's like, if you need me to, like, give me your money and I'll hold on to it and you can keep adding to it. And I'm always like, no, I'm good. But, like, so does that mean if I were to start paying a drug dealer all of a sudden, if I had my mom holding $1,000, like, now my mom's house is gonna get fucking searched?
Probably.
My mom's gonna get shot because she was holding on to money that had nothing to do with my activities.
It's just crazy.
Like, yeah. So the PD eventually did release an incident report also regarding what happened at Breonna Taylor's house. Yeah. Her injuries are listed as none.
Yep.
And it indicated that there was no forced entry. What? Are you kidding me? Then why is there a battering ram outside? Like, are you freaking...
The number one thing that you use for a forced entry. We didn't do it.
It's so dumb. I don't remember where I saw this, but I saw that Brett Hankinson actually went AWOL for 2 hours after the shooting as well. He was the officer who had gone around the side of the apartment and started shooting through the patio door. Which, obviously, that's not supposed to happen. If you're in an officer-involved shooting, you need to be brought in to give statements, like what happened, we need to know. You need to talk to your superiors and shit. There's stuff that has to be done. But Hankinson actually had a history of excessive force, taking money from suspects. He had complaints for his conduct, but he was always cleared. Nothing made it into his personnel file. But there was a woman named Emily who claimed that he actually gave her a ride home one night. I think she had been, drinking or something, and she was looking for a taxi, and he pulled up in a normal car, but he was in police uniform. So he ends up touching her leg and, calling her baby and kisses her on the head when she goes to get out, which that was as far as it went from what she said, but she posted her experience on Instagram, and numerous other women apparently commented, sharing similar experiences with Hankinson. So take that for, what you will. In December of 2020, there was a Louisville police investigator named Sergeant Andrew Mayer who said that police should not have returned fire because it put other neighbors in danger. And he states that the officers had an obligation to only use deadly force on the person posing a threat, which would have been Kenneth Walker. But they could not safely do that due to the layout of the hall in Breonna's apartment. And he said that they fired 32 shots when even one would have been unsafe to fire, but he was eventually overruled by police leadership. Hankinson was eventually also fired because he blindly fired 10 shots into the apartment without explanation, and he ended up being charged with 3 counts of wanton endangerment for firing shots that entered a neighbor's apartment and endangered 3 people. That trial was originally set to begin on August 31st of this year, 2021, but it's been postponed to February 1st of 2022. Miles Cosgrove fired 16 shots, including the shot that, according to the FBI, actually killed Breonna. He was fired for violating the use of deadly force procedures and not using his body cam. Remember I said that would come back up?
He did!
Yeah, so the one that actually fired the bullet that killed her didn't use his body cam, and in his police chief's termination letter, it says that his shots went in 3 different directions, which indicated that he did not verify the target as required before he opened fire.
Thank God.
We say thank God, but what pisses me off about this is nobody's been charged for Breonna.
With her actual death.
So we're sitting here like these 2 have been fired because they violated things.
Right.
And yet nobody's charged. John Mattingly, who was the officer who was shot, who is the only one I can actually understand returning fire because he was physically injured and trying to get to safety. You know what I mean?
Right.
He was shielding himself. So I completely I can understand his perspective in the moment.
Right.
But he only fired 6 shots. And he wasn't fired, but he did retire on June 1st of 2021 because of everything that's happened because of this case.
Right.
The charges against Kenneth Walker, the assault and attempted murder of a police officer, were dismissed, I think, within a week of him being arrested. And they were dismissed with prejudice, so he can't actually be charged again for that shooting.
Which, that is a thank God, too. Like that.
Right, yeah.
Because you know how it is. Let's get hypothetical here for a second. Let's pretend that the 2 cops are actually going to be charged with her murder. And they didn't do that to him. They didn't do that to Kenneth. I feel like they would then try to turn around and get him at least.
Yeah, because they'd
something.
be okay, I have kind of experience with this. It wasn't a murder situation, but yeah, it happens to where if you try to point a finger at someone because they've done something wrong, that they can come back to you, even though you haven't actually done anything wrong, they can make it seem like you have. And come back to you. So it's basically okay, we can send them to jail, but you are going to go also.
Yeah.
And what does that do? It intimidates you, and it makes you drop the charges. Yep. Or some people are brave, some people still can fight through it. And Breonna Taylor's family, they are all working with lawyers to try to get justice for
I
her.
really
as
hope
should
that,
be.
yes, that justice is served for her. I really want, like, it was crazy and sad that, like, what happened a few months later to, George Floyd overcovered what I feel was,
We needed more on Breonna Taylor. I think we need more.
Yeah.
Everybody's so focused on, George Floyd did XYZ. Like, they focus on his negative. I dare you to find me a negative in this.
Right?
Like,
This girl did
what?
not deserve
She
anything.
partied sometimes? Okay.
And she loved
Where
it.
was she guilty in this crime?
She loved a drug dealer or somebody that was on a troubled path. That's not a crime.
Right.
That doesn't make her a bad person. That just means, okay, the person that you fell in love with did something, not the best. It
was enough of a problem that Louisville, where this happened, adopted a law called Breonna's Law that banned the use of no-knock warrants, and Lexington, Kentucky actually followed suit. So, hopefully that will continue on and, like,
people will catch on and be like, hey, you know what? These no-knock warrants are actually probably more harmful than they are useful, I feel, in most... not most, but...
If we're being real, we have drones and stuff now. You have cell phones that track people. Like, you have so many different ways of finding people.
You're right.
The government knows where we are before we know where we are.
Right, there's no reason for a battering ram anymore, I feel, and breaking in like that.
At least give them a freaking blowhorn, so when they're announcing themselves, like, there's no risk.
Or, like, maybe there should be a distinct sound, like a whistle or something. Like, that if you hear that whistle, then that's the police that are announcing themselves. Like, that's your announcement. But then again, though, like, anybody, it has to be a specific one, though, that, like, you can't go and buy.
That's why I said a bullhorn, though. Because if you're going to insist that no-knock work, then make it so the first rule is you kick the door, and before you, like, maybe move to the side, use a blowhorn, this is the police, and boom, in. How long, like, honestly, that 1 or 2 seconds, like, is it really going to...
affect it? Not really.
Is it going to, like, we're going to save some lives.
Right.
And...
let's think of the 31 innocent people that have lost their lives, and the 8 police officers. Because, I mean, we didn't get into much detail, like, I didn't know about what happened then, but... people are losing their lives because of this. So let's try to change it.
Babies are having 15 surgeries. It's ridiculous.
Because of a flash grenade? Are you kidding me?
Which is the other thing. If we're using, like, if we're using Call of Duty style fucking flares, like things, concussion grenades, flash grenades, we know these names because we play Call of Duty. That's military. That's warfare. Why the fuck are we doing these where there's infants and children?
In people's homes, right.
Like, where the neighbors aren't secure. Like, and the other thing, I didn't mention this in the podcast, was those 7 officers on the scene were also plainclothes officers. So they weren't in uniform. Oh. They had bulletproof vests, but you can see in the video, especially, like you can see Brett Hankison's wearing, like, tan or khaki colored pants and, like, a standard shirt. Like, obviously not, like, a fucking graphic shirt.
Right, but like a button-up type almost.
Yeah, looking like you could be going to lunch or dinner with, like, a lunch meeting or some shit, but you're wearing a bulletproof vest. So, it's totally deceptive, and it's not right. And we always, as always, we want to know what you guys think. Do you agree with us? Do you think we're being overly judgmental? I'm not saying it was a race thing. I'm not saying that the police went in there with the intention to kill anybody. But I'm saying that this kind of thing should never be allowed to happen, and that, like, we need to make sure it doesn't happen ever again. Right. To anybody. Ever. The song of the week that I guess I picked for you, because Mikey always gives me free reign, I just figured we'd go with Angels on the Moon by Thriving Ivory, because I kind of love that song.
With that being said, guys, I want to thank you again for watching another episode of Tainted Warriors. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Tainted Warriors, a TW Productions podcast.